According to YouTube, I'm live. Well, what are we doing? Well, today we're working on episode 4, actually. And so I got the first shot. Oh, I mean, technically, I guess the second shot, but I got the second shot done today, which was. There you go. There's the second shot. So I'm working on the next shot right now. As I mentioned the other day in the live stream, I was thinking I was probably going to bounce over to Homa 2D again, and which I am. And I gotta say, this shot was really challenging to do, and I'll tell you why. Just for the record, for the sake of, I guess, completeness here, um, I did all the drawing and then the ink in Blender, and I could tell because of all the overlap that I didn't really want to do the fill operations in Blender. And oh, holy cow! I'm gonna tell you, 50% of the time, my fills they leaked, so it was pretty arduous. Pretty arduous. Hey Ross, how you doing, buddy? Um. So anyway, no big deal. I brought it over to Krita, and I just sort of resigned myself that the fill operations were going to be a little tedious, and they were, and I got through it. So anyway, the shot came out nice. I'm not complaining about that. So here we are, jumping back over to Tahoma 2D. So Ross, you're a Tahoma guy, so you're probably happy to see me using the software you like. So what happens here? Well, per the storyboard, Lekbar kind of pushes Asher pretty hard, and then Jehoiakim, I believe is the other guy's name, he kind of chews him out, and then Asher has a line of dialogue. So that's what we're doing. All right, doing well. Working on the next music video. Oh, good. I'm glad you're staying busy with that. I got to say the only, I guess you'd call it commissioned work that I've done has been animation for a mobile app that's actually, yeah, I mean open tunes, but it's about, I mean, what would you say, Ross? What would you say is the main difference to you at this point in history between Tahoma 2D and OpenTunes, and what might make one, preferable? For those who don't know, the software I'm using here is a fork of OpenTunes. So for all practical purposes, they're kind of the same program, but not exactly. They do have some differences, but as far as I've been able to tell, the differences aren't, for my work, aren't significant. But yeah, it was the mobile app work has been fun because it's the animation is 24 frames per second, and unfortunately, the app has not been released yet, so I really can't show too much. I could probably just show one thing from it that's kind of cool. Actually, I can't really even do that without showing everything else. So I have to wait. I gotta wait to show. Okay, so one thing that happened today, by the way, just in the interest again of completeness, is that I have a little bit of a different approach to project management with Tahoma 2D. And so the way I do it is you've got your Tahoma 2D scenes folder. So when you create a scene in your project, that's saved in the scenes folder. So for me, that is what happens. But when I render it, what happens is whatever I named this scene, it doesn't matter what I named it. What Tahoma 2D will do is it'll create a folder within the scenes folder that has the same name as this scene, and then create a new folder inside of that called render, and all the rendered images get put in there. I actually struggled with it for a bit because I was switching it from episode 3 to episode 4, and I screwed something up, so I had to go back and look at the docs and figure out how I had botched the the settings. But the important thing you're looking for in that regard, if this is something you think you might bump into, is under project management, project settings. And the key bit was I had scene path / render, and I thought that scene path was going to be replaced by scenes episode 4 / the name of the scene, but that's not right. And so I'm getting the drive letter with a colon in the path like twice. It was really botched. So the solution to the problem was hard coding this. I needed to hard code scenes episode 4. Now I will tell you guys, if you ever wind up doing a project as big as this one, which there's over 1,000 scenes, spread over several episodes, be aware that there are some things that can bite you. One would be that by changing this, updating this so that it's doing episode 4 instead of episode 3, if for any reason I need to open up one of the Tahoma 2D scenes for episode 3 and re-render it, I need to remember to change this back. Otherwise, it'll actually create new folders in the episode 4, subfolder. So, just something to be aware of. Anyway, differences are some features, no major difference, just simpler for newcomers to the software. Okay. Why do you think that is? Why would it be easier? Because I know when oh geez, I forget the guy's name, but when the guy forked and created Tahoma, he definitely, one of the goals was to make it an easier learning curve for newbies, because he was using it in a class. Actually, he was teaching a class in a university. Oh, you're saying Tahoma's simpler. Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's probably true. So anyway, Asher gets pushed, and then we jump to this actually jumps to another shot. So I guess for this particular one, I guess I won't muddy it up. The point is that the two guys are behind him in this shot, so we're cutting to in front of him for a minute because I had his head kind of bonking against the wall. And then he's kind of dazed for a moment, and then it switches to Jehoiakim chewing out lechbar, and then so I gave enough frames here for the lip sync, and then now we're dealing with this. So let me see. I think what I'll do is I'll get 1 or 2 frames of Asher from behind. So I think that works. That's cool. And then let's go ahead and we'll just assume this is going to be, I'm not going to use the skins, I'm just going to do it that way. Okay, so let's just kind of, it's anime, right? So it's 8 frames per second. Let's assume that probably we don't need to put in a bunch of tweens. So if this winds up being too jerky, then I'll put 1 tween in. I hope that makes sense. So Asher's turning around. And so, all right. So who else we got here tonight? I'm glad people are showing up. I live streamed the other day during the day, which I can at least in the United States, I can understand why nobody really shows up, because it's during the normal work day. Okay, I've got to remember some of my hotkeys, because I haven't been in Tahoma 2D for a while, and I just accidentally hit the wrong hotkey and rotated the screen, and I don't remember what the reset is. You can hit N to restore it, but if I flip the screen, it'll still be tilted. I can't. Hey Ross, you remember what's the hotkey to reset the rotation? Isn't it like Alt F or something? Anyway, if you remember, let me know. I hate that when it's like, I've been in Blender land for a while, and that was because if you guys remember, it's been quite a few months ago, but I basically said, you know what, I'm gonna give Blender a fair shake. And I have to say, and I did quite a few shots in Blender. There's a lot to recommend it. Obviously, if you want to have If you want to have the best opportunity for finding a job in the animation industry, my personal opinion, probably Blender's the tool you want to look at. But to Ross's point, if you want the gentlest entry into the world of animation, I think Tahoma 2D or OpenToons is probably the most complete tool, plus not that huge of a learning curve. But of course, I still use Krita a lot. The only advantage Krita really has is, from a painting standpoint, like painting in layers and blending modes, it's a little more quick. It's not really more powerful, honestly, but it's quicker to set things up, add layers, set the blending modes, things like that. Masking for shadows, it's all like click, click, done. Whereas in Tahoma, you need to go into the schematic and actually set things up a little more meticulously. So, just saying. Okay, so he turns, and then he actually has a line of dialogue, and I think it would make sense for him to actually, we'll just put the close-up in this shot. Performance note, once you get past, a few seconds of animation, Tahoma 2D is definitely way the hell better than Krita. Krita's good for one shot at a time, and I've paid the price way too many times where I tried to do what I'm doing in Tahoma, where I pack basically 3 or 4 shots into a single quote-unquote scene or shot, and I pay for it every time. I've never failed to regret it because Krita just starts bogging down too much. Okay, so he turns, and then I'm just going to guess after he turns, 1 second would be plenty, I should think. So let's just do 8 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we'll just go here and cut to a close-up. And that's probably a little too big, actually. So S key, Shift. Yeah, there we go. That's better. B key, back to drawing. And then again, Asher's got 1 line of dialogue. What does he say? Yeah, and I've changed all my hotkeys. In fact, I actually changed Tahoma not that long ago, so that like you can hit W to rewind and spacebar to play. Just because I wanted like when I go from Blender to Krita to Tahoma, I don't want to have to keep mentally switching hotkeys all the time. Which I did it. It's not that big of a deal, but it's definitely kind of nice to have unified hotkeys. Okay, so Asher, his line of dialogue is,
"That's very kind, Joachim. Your mother would be pleased. But Lekbar has a job to do, and I apparently am a danger to the throne."
"The charges are ridiculous, and we all know it, Asher," is what Jehoiakim says. And then Golik shows up in the dungeon. So the original shot, the first shot in this episode was, it must be this one. Yeah. So this is the opening shot. So the sequence would be doors open. That's pretty much it for that shot. Cuts to this with Lekbar being a little nasty. And now we're here. So I've literally covered all the animation software that I use between those 3 shots. Ba-dunk, ga-dunk, ga-dunk. So I don't know how long I'll be going tonight. I haven't been animating in the evening that much. And I'm just kind of feeling like I want to, so. I don't think I want him smiling like that much. So what else is going on out there in the world, you guys? Anything interesting? Anything going on? Let's see here. Okay, yeah, so he could turn like that. In a minute here, I'll go ahead and check the timing, see if I did it okay. Rewind. He says, I mean, that's probably about right. Cool beans. Now I need to get back to my drawing so I can, to my frame, I should say. So I don't accidentally create a new keyframe when I didn't want to. Alright. Well, friends, I'm thinking maybe we can dive right into ink and paint. I'm going to create another layer. A lot of times I put it all in one layer, but I'm kind of feeling like that's probably not the greatest idea ever. So I'm just going to turn this down. Oh, you know what? I just realized your comment about the Tahoma hotkeys was because I asked about the... It seems like it would be under the view panel. No. Hotkeys. I guess we'll just configure shortcuts. Must be, it's probably rotation, like reset the rotation. There it is. It's Alt-Shift-R. So if I go like this and go Alt-Shift-R. Okay, that's weird. I don't even know what to think about that. That's annoying. But yet it somehow reset it. So there's something in the flow there that's a little winky, but it did work. So I guess I won't complain too much. Yeah. What I'm looking at right now is that, let me see something here. That's, so if I go Shift Spacebar in Krita, that is rotate. But if I go Control Spacebar, it's zoom. Okay, yeah. So I changed the Tahoma hotkeys to match Krita. I should have probably done it the other way around because when I want to zoom, my fingers want to naturally go to Shift, not Control. But hey, we all have to deal with our hotkeys. So this all goes by pretty quick. So his expression isn't like mission critical here. So this inking is being done with, it's a My Paint brush I created a long time ago that has a little bit of smoothing baked into it. Oops. Today I was teaching my African gray parrot. She's a Woman by the Beatles. Zuko really does like to sing. Whenever I pull up the guitar and start strumming, he literally starts singing, and it's amazing because he can sing in tune. If I play a D chord or something or an A, he will find a note that does match the chord. It's kind of amazing. Kind of an amazing guy. So who else is here tonight? I hope it isn't Ross under 3 different identities. Seems like that happened once. Okay, so here's Lekbar's ornery hand. Probably better to zoom in. And again, this is all going by pretty fast. E. Part of the trick, friends, is knowing where you need to be extra careful. And the basic rule is if things are moving really fast, you don't have to be extra careful. So what I'm going to do here is actually just make a duplicate. And now I'm going to just make some adjustments. One adjustment would be I'm just going to give this one frame of tweenage. And then his hand will disappear. Okay. So can we leverage any of this? I'd say so. We probably can take this bit here. And smack that down there. And then we will erase. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use this collar too. Why not? Why not, friends? Might as well use it. It's there. All this stuff needs to go though. B key. Hey Maria. Ross Payne. Yeah. Was Nugget 40. I think he still is Nugget 40. Aren't you, Ross? Or have you abandoned that identity for some reason? The feds tracked you down and you had to change your name or something? Cool. There it is. What time is it? Man, I've been going for a half hour already? Well, 20 minutes. Amazing. Okay, so boom, boom. I did say I was going to review and look at the timing. I want to check the turn of the head there and make sure that was okay. We'll turn this off for the moment. Yeah, actually. What I'm looking at is whether the turn was too quick. Right here. But no. At 8 frames per second, it actually felt about right.
So, back to work.
This is not happening. Okay, this might be one of those classic situations where, yeah, I need to come back. I need to turn this off, come back here, and get a little clearer on what I'm doing tween-wise. Okay, what was that? B key. Why is it oh, I don't know how I got switched on my palette, but there it is. Okay, so I really, what you don't see his whole body, but what would happen is he's getting pushed pretty hard, and his leg obviously would kind of try to come under and catch him, but you can't really see it. So, and his hands might splay out to sort of try to catch himself as well. Now, obviously, I think what I just did didn't. I was gonna say it didn't make sense, but actually it did. Okay, so one thing we do need to do is not forget about his collar. Okay. Okay, so then what we need here is just a decent, this is going to be the keyframe, if you will, in the sense that we want to have a good rendition of Asher's face, because the next couple frames are just going to be the same shot, or, the same drawing being animated. Don't need to redraw and re-ink his face over and over, or something like that. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so now I want to loosen up here a little bit. And think about his body weight. His arms would be probably kind of out like this. Okay, again, 8 frames per second. So I'm going to go ahead and crunch the shoulder in as opposed to giving it 2 frames. I suspect that's what it's going to want to be, you know, to look right. Okay, again, we don't want to forget his collar. Yeah, he gets knocked here pretty good. I mean, that Lekbar is not the sweetest guy ever. Feels pretty good. Okay, a little bit of a beard thing going on. Rewind. Okay, boom, bam. Alright, so now I'm gonna assume I can probably put in some effects here. You know, this is gonna be animated, so I think if he comes to a stop, maybe I'll go ahead and just take his whole body and shift it a little bit over these frames just to give it a little bit of life. Could even maybe put in a little bit of plastic tool just to move things around. That feels pretty good. Then it cuts to there. Okay, so now are we suitable for ink? Probably pretty close. Okay, we'll turn this back down a bit. Save it. Back here. Back to ink mode. Okay, so yeah, I did have a bit of a mistake there with the whole collar thing. I think I want to turn this down even more. So, again, I say, who's around? And is there anything interesting we should be chatting about tonight? I'm not particularly wanting to get into the whole Epstein files thing or anything like that. Not tonight. Alright, so there's that. Oops. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and redraw him. You know, as usual, you got a little bit of latitude. In the sense that he's moving quickly, so if the characterization gets off a little, that's okay. But I'm just kind of feeling like I want to tighten the characterization up a bit. Nobody's talking. Nobody's talking tonight. Apparently the peaceful animation process is all that's required. Animator Island. He's giving me homework every month. Lovely critique from Ferdinand. I don't know Ferdinand. I don't think I know that person. Animator Island, huh? Well, I'm glad to hear you're getting some instruction that is working for you. You have to actually think, huh? Yeah. That's generally, thinking is generally good policy. Okay, so now we're into the front view. So, as I said, this pose right here, I want to make sure I nail the characterization because I'm basically going to cut and paste this through this sequence. What are you finding, Maria, that you need to think about? What is it that's challenging you? I am curious. Ooh, that was pretty good, but not perfect. I need to leave a little bit of room for the cap. I have to think about how to make the motion smooth and not samey. What would I can guess, but I'd rather let you explain it. What does samey mean? I'm not sure what samey would mean in the context of animation. You know, that's actually, while you're thinking about that answer, he says, don't worry about character and story now. I'm good at that. I need mechanics. Well, okay. Which makes me say, well, okay, mechanics is such a broad term. What does that mean in practical terms? And I think this is an important question to ask for this reason. The better you can articulate exactly what the problem is, the better position you're in to solve it, you know, and develop the habits that you're trying to develop. So it's good to be able to articulate very specifically what's going wrong and or needing to be corrected, you know. That's when an object moves, it lacks a certain organic quality. Okay, I like that. Okay, so what do you think, as best you know with your current body of knowledge, what is it that you think gives an animation the characteristic that you would call organic or not? Like, what would be the not? I have some opinions about that, but I'd rather hear your answer first to see if we think the same way about it or a little differently. So, and while you're thinking about that answer, what I was going to say is I have thought about just asking you guys that are here, like, you know, I created the Animation Truman Show because I was just trying to, you know, I'm doing content that I would like to watch, which is basically the real work, not theory and not instruction so much as just what does it look like when the real person's doing the real show kind of thing. Because to me, that's what's interesting for me. But I have thought, you know, I mean, what do you guys, you know, what am I not doing that you wish I was doing in terms of the content in a way that would help you guys? So I'm just throwing that out there. You guys can answer or not. But yeah, I'm curious what, when you think about that certain organic quality, what do you think that organic quality is? Or what is the metric or the, what would it be that you see in an animation that causes you to say, oh, that's not organic. No, no, that's too samey or stiff or whatever the word might be. Okay, actually, I kind of made a mistake here. I made an error. The error is, no, I mean, I guess I don't really want to duplicate this anyway, so forget what I said. I was going to cut and paste and move the head, but I don't actually want it to be the same pose. There's some serious squash and stretch going on here. And by the way, Maria, there's no right answer that I'm looking for here. I'm just curious about what it means to you. boink. That's better. Yeah, there's a way of following the arc of the motion that I'm not quite grasping yet. The measurement between one set of frames and the natural flow from one to the next. Well, I'll say that based on what I remember is it's the old thing of sticks and balls. You know, before it was too jumpy, now it's too predictable. There's a way of following the arc of the motion I'm not quite grasping yet. The measurement between one set of frames and the natural flow from one to the next. Okay, I'm going to run with that comment before I move to the predictable versus jumpy one. Okay, so my question would be this. First of all, I suspect that most of the time you're animating what they call straight ahead, as opposed to what they call pose to pose. So when I say that, do you know what I'm talking about when I say pose to pose versus straight ahead? Just pop it in the comments if we're on the same page and speaking the same terminology. If we're not, I'll clarify it, because those are somewhat important terms, because in the history of animation, as far as conventions of what makes for good animation, normally we think of animation as being one of two approaches, either straight ahead or pose to pose. And I guess while you think about your answer, I'll ramble a bit about what the Disney guys, learned and talk about in the seminal tome Disney Animation: The Illusion of Life, which I bought my copy of that when I was in high school. So I've had it for what would that be, 40 years. Wow. I'm an old man. That second way is what I do. Pose to pose. Okay, right? Not straight ahead. Straight ahead would be I draw the character, and then I draw the next pose, and then I draw the next pose, and then I draw the next pose, and kind of see where things end up. That would be straight ahead animation. Pose to pose says I'm going to draw my character, and then I'm going to draw my next pose over here, and then I'm going to figure out how to get from here to there. Right? So if this is somebody, and by the way, I will tell you that one of the best ways you could work on that probably is by working out your animation on a single sheet of paper without actually animating. Because for most fledgling animators, I would say the problem you run into more than anything else is that you can get into the nuance of whether your character or your movement is smooth or convincing. But as you guys know from what I do here, a lot of times making it convincing is very much like this bit here with Asher with the turn of the head. What makes it convincing is how little I'm doing. Because in the anime space, and really with any kind of limited animation, what you're looking for is a good drawing, and then another good drawing, and then you have to figure out, how do I get from this drawing to that drawing? Right? So a lot of times at 8 frames per second, the answer is you don't. You actually, just the two drawings winds up giving you pacing that works. So what you wind up with is a static pose that, think of it this way, if this pose is compelling or funny or something like that, then I'm thinking I want the audience to have a moment to process that and enjoy whatever the entertainment value is in that drawing. That was why I referenced the Disney book, because the biggest thing those guys learned is that before you can animate really, really well, you have to draw well. Okay, now that is not necessarily a requirement, because you can have a very stylistic or simplistic or cartoony way of drawing, and you can still make it work in motion, right? For sure. So most people are going to probably struggle the most with the fact that their characters change volume and shape arms get longer and shorter, um, things like that. And so you see the characters kind of mushing all over the place in terms of they feel like they're morphing their shape over time when in reality they wouldn't. They would maintain their shape. In other words, well, let me think about how to say this. The caveat there about drawing, you don't necessarily have to be great at drawing, but what is important is whatever you draw. The key to drawing is what you drew what you intended to draw. This would be my contribution to what you're learning right now. Ask yourself that at all times. Is what I drew what I intended to draw? It doesn't matter what you intended to draw. What matters is whether what you intended and what you actually did match. Because if they don't, then you definitely have a drawing problem. And I can say with my like oil painting and stuff, the best paintings I've done are the ones where I am absolutely determined that no matter how long it takes, usually it doesn't take that long, but no matter what it takes, if it doesn't look the way I intended it to look, then I'm going to keep working at it until it does. And then I can start to think about, well, obviously animation. You wouldn't be animating an oil painting, but you get my point. My drawing has definitely improved since I started animating. But I do also revert at times. I'm better at maintaining characterization and maintaining volume in the character, so they kind of feel like they're the same person at the end of the scene as they were at the beginning. I used to really, actually, back when I was starting out here, and actually when I started live streaming on YouTube, I struggled quite a bit with that. But, you never stop learning. There's always room for improvement no matter what, so. And obviously it's always a good idea to flip your screen. So my point about let me actually pop up I'm gonna pop up my paint real quick to show you what I'm talking about. Boink. Keeping consistency from frame to frame is hard. Well, but the thing is, Maria, there's a reason why it's hard. So what your job is to figure out what is the reason. What is it really and specifically that's tripping you up? It is good. It is good you're getting some tutoring. I guess that's not the brush I wanted. I always like the pencil-y kind of brush. So if I have well, in Maria's case, if I, let's just say I'm Maria right now. So Maria would draw some kind of critter. I guess it's not exactly like a cat, but it's some kind of critter. And Ferdinand's a good tutor. Cool. So I would be asking myself, first of all, when I draw the critter, does the critter look the way I expected it to look? That's the first thing. Animation doesn't matter yet. Okay, so I'm just drawing a lame-o critter. Yeah, right. I knew you liked cats. This really doesn't look like a cat. But I guess if I gave it a mouth like that and more like that type of thing, it might be more like a cat. But anyway, so here's the thing. When I think about this cat, and I want this cat to move, okay, so if I'm working it out on one piece of paper, what I might do is say, okay, over here, just to keep it simple, we'll say the cat's gonna jump from here to here. Now, if the cat jumped from here to here, and we've got this cat, so I'm going to draw this very roughly, just there's kind of a nose and whiskers, and let's just say we kind of know that the cat's sort of sitting like this. Well, I mean, for a beginner, for sure, I would stop right there and go, whoa, that's taking on a lot. That is taking on a lot. That's probably more than we want to bite. You were biting off more than we can chew. Now, if this cat, on the other hand, was going to crouch down like it was going to pounce, now that would be a little more in the zone of what you might want to try to do. So if I add another layer, turn this one down, and basically say, okay, well, I know I want the critter to kind of pop down like this. The cool thing is I immediately can ask myself, well, did the head that I drew match the one I drew before? Because if it doesn't, then, and I used to do this all the time, then your characterization changed. Something's different between this one and this one. And so I would be thinking, okay, what's different? And then I'll leave it at this because, again, you have a tutor, so I don't want to, like bust into that whole relationship. The other thing would be just do the sticks and balls thing. Know that if this is the way the structure is, then this cannot move in any way other than on an arc. So if this leg were to move back and then stretch out, let's say, each of these joints need to be the same length as they were before. As long as you maintain that underlying structure, you're probably going to be, you're going to be okay. Then it just becomes a timing thing where you're figuring out, well, if this moved on this arc, okay, so there'd be a tween here. Well, at this point, where would this joint be? This is probably the key thing you want to ask yourself. Where would it be? Well, if I'm thinking about it, what I would say is, if it's going to go from here to here and it's moving this way, then what would actually happen is this would probably stay pretty close to here. And this might throw up a little bit this way, because what's happening is you've got the musculature pulling in this direction and the rest of the legs getting dragged behind. It would actually get left behind. So then you'd probably say, well, okay, now I want another tween here where this begins to pull back this way, but the gravity is still wanting to stay here, and then this would snap back fairly quickly to this position. It would be whipped back by the energy of this move. So the whole sticks and balls thing can definitely be a really good thing to think about. Anyway, I just throw that out there to try to be maybe somewhat helpful. Arc really helps with proportions, so many other things. Yep, and you can always, just draw a circle around the body parts, a circle or a square or whatever around the body parts on a different layer, just so you can quickly measure. Just measure and make sure everything's fitting inside. Like if I say, okay, I have a complex structure like a head, and I want it to maintain its volume. Well, that is actually pretty hard because it's a complex shape, and the chances of drawing it exactly the same way twice is pretty low. However, if you think about, well, yeah, but what's the volume that head is contained inside of? In this case, it'd be a definite circle here, cone here, and then a couple discs, basically half discs, right? And so now I can say, now that I can wrap my head around. That I can pretty convincingly get the fundamental shapes the same size twice in a row. That I can do. And then it's all like I've always been saying, ever since I've been on YouTube, I've been saying this for years, is, you work from the known to the unknown. So once you get to this point, you go, okay, now we're getting into the details and the nuance. Like, okay, on this cone, where does the bottom of the nose fall? Well, looks like it's about 2/5 of the way. Okay, so we got this. There's 2/5. That would tell me that the bottom of the nose probably needs to be about there. This pretty much bisects it, so it's basically half and half. Not exactly, but it's pretty close. So that means the mouth would be roughly there. You get the idea. Erase, selective. Poof.
Back to work, my friends, back to work.
Just stuff to think about, Maria. I'd say this one we can do what I was going to do before, which was take this bit and just move it into place here, and then just make a couple little adjustments. Whoopsie. Wait a minute. Did I just do what I think I just did? Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm supposed to hit the D key and duplicate the frame. Then I can do what I was trying to do. Asher's thinking,
David, you are a silly goose. Absolutely a silly goose. I don't know why I put up with you. It must be because I love you.
okay, and by the way, this is actually important. He's moving slightly closer to the camera here. So I'm going to make that slightly bigger. And then here, I need to make another duplicate. I keep forgetting. In Krita, of course, I could go to the next frame, or Blender 2, go to the next frame and just start drawing, and it would automatically create the keyframe. Here it will too, but it would create a blank keyframe. I guess there's probably a setting. I didn't even think about this, but Ross, help me out, man. What's the in Tahoma or OpenTunes? Isn't there a way to start drawing in a frame where it creates a new keyframe, but you're just building on the last one? I think I've always just hit the D key, so it never occurred to me that maybe there is a way to do that. I would say this bit, maybe a little more recoil. Okay, so we'll put in the little anime effects later. Back to the B key. You just do the D key thing too, yeah. Just make a duplicate. Okay, so now, me being me, the thing I got to be careful about is not breaking the continuity. Where I screw up all the time is I'll do a shot like this, and then I'll just get into it, the next shot, and I'll completely lose the characterization. So, good policy on this particular shot would probably be to go back here. Okay, so this guy's actually a pretty sharp nose, is actually pretty big. And back to Maria for a minute. I will tell you that a lot of it has to do with just feelings. Which I think women tend to be better at this than guys, but just being sensitive to your feelings. Like, as I'm doing this right here, what I'm doing here, I can feel, like, when it's like, it doesn't feel like the same person. And, you're drawing along, and then all of a sudden, you realize there's something that doesn't feel right. And you want to stop. When that happens, you want to stop right then. Go, okay, what's the problem? What went wrong here? Because you feel that for a reason.
And I think it's very good for us to be tuned into our feelings.
Right? Right. Okay. Now I can go to ink with a little more confidence. Okay, that might be too sharp. Yeah, it's too sharp. That's better. Yes, always listen to the little voice. You don't have to follow it necessarily. It's your prerogative whether you want to respect it. But it is good to notice, you get that little feeling for a reason. This is a little winky the way I chose to do his mustache, but it kind of works. In other words, I have to leave this open because the color's going to basically finish the job for me, which means I'll have to manually paint it a little bit as opposed to doing a typical fill operation. Okay, and I'm going to flop this around. Yeah, this Lekbar guy, I don't love this guy. He's a bit of a jerk.
Bit of a jerk, as Asher would say. Well, I wouldn't call him a jerk exactly, but, well, I guess I would call him a jerk.
Okay, so he's got kind of the pretty much. That's too big. That's exactly what I was just talking about. That feeling. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. This is too. There we go. That's more like it. More like what I had on the other frames. But Dave, Lekbar is just doing his job. Exactly. Listened to a little voice and almost got arrested. Got arrested? I'm a little slow tonight. I don't get the joke. Yes. Lekbar is just doing his job. Well, and Asher says that. Maybe you remember that from the script. But yeah, that's he's just doing his job. Asher doesn't really begrudge him doing his job, but being, extra cruel is not really strictly necessary, you know what I mean? So all right, N key, not bad, not bad. And I'll just go like this. What I was trying to say, and I never finished the sentence, is his uniform is like, I would assume he is of probably the lowest rank, because there's no frills or on his uniform. And strictly speaking, this is actually wrong. I forgot when it cuts to this in the storyboard, it's just a smug grin this guy's wearing. Not the big smile thing. I do not like this right now. Let me redo that. Feels a little bit too pointy. Okay, I think I can live with that. Probably should close that shape right there. And now, I did it again. What was it? Shift Alt R? Yep. Shift Alt R. Strike that. I don't want to put the mouth in, because there's going to be lip sync. So this guy, he's basically got a beard. It's one of those things, you're doing ink. You need to have closed shapes, obviously. But the drawer in me, the guy that likes to draw, just wants to just scribble it in, just sketch it, and keep it loose and leave some of the, leave it to your imagination to sort of fill in the blanks. The problem is, in animation, you can't quite always do that because you have to be able to fill the shapes. Unless you're going to sit and manually paint a bunch of frames. Ain't going to lie, on this shot, I had to do a lot of that, and it was a pain. It was not fun. It was not fun. What time is it? 7 o'clock-ish. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stretch this down a little bit so we do not have a tangent right there. Generally in animation, tangents are frowned upon. Okay, so now this guy, he would have, I guess his would go something like that. But then he also has this bit. So I guess we'd see a little bit of his neck there. I'm going to cheat, hit the M key, and zoom way in. And then by cheat, I mean I'm going to go like that, and then erase the extra lines. Because I don't know about you, but for me, trying to... Oh, I still didn't really do it perfectly, if the truth be known, so...
So much for all your brilliant techniques.
All your techniques that sound great on paper and don't work in the real world kind of thing. Alright, M key. Dave, is this the first shot? Well, it's the first sequence. So the first shot is this, the second shot is this, the third shot is this. Yeah. We're getting right into episode 4. Meanwhile, I'm working on episode 3. I'm still working on the score. Haven't actually gotten much done on it the last day or so. But
C'est la vie.
Okay. Let's review. Okay, I guess really what we want to do is go way down here and just... I will draw those lines and then make a duplicate. That way I don't have to draw those lines twice, and I can just focus on good old Asher. Wait a minute. Okay, except I made a mistake, didn't I? I wasn't using my ink. Sorry. Boom, and boom, and then duplicate. Go back here. These guys, this is just going to be silhouette, these guys, in the foreground. That's the concept, is it's the silhouette thing. Boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, boom, boom, ba-doom, boom, 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 boom. Yep, I was teaching Zuko. She's a woman. My love, don't give me presents. I know that she's no peasant. That has got to be one of the stupidest lyrics in the history of lyrics. I know that she's no peasant. I think Paul was stretching a bit that day, or maybe not stretching hard enough. Okay, I do have a bit of latitude on this shot because this is only on the screen for 1 frame. Right? And we know that we're allowed to cheat a bit if things are moving fast, because we know that the brain can't digest the details at speed. So you do have a little bit more latitude when your characters are moving fast. Don't want to make that an excuse to be sloppy. However, in truth, it is an excuse to be sloppy. A lot of times you deliberately want to be sloppy, you know, because you're stretching out Well, you saw it in this shot. Honestly, let's go back and you can see. Watch what his head does. Right? Is that sloppy? Absolutely. It's garbage, but problem is it looks good. But that's the cool thing about animation, and one of the cool things about it. So you just want to make sure this pose is, pretty good, because that's where everything stops moving, and the audience can decide, does that look good to me or not? So choose your battles, friends. Choose your battles. Perfect schmurfect. Well, listen, regarding Paul, who's perfect? Regarding Paul, who's Paul? Maria, I don't think I know what you're even talking about. Am I? I'm probably missing something like stupidly obvious because I'm sort of thinking about this. I'm animating and live streaming and everything else. But Paul, who's Paul? Okay, actually, same thing here. I do not want to put his mouth in there. And because of that, I probably should make this more just a straight line, because he's going to be jabbering in a minute. So, do we cut to a close-up or not? Yep, we do. So, actually, I'm going to do it like that. I think that'll be okay. Boom. Shkaboom. Shkaboom. And shkaboom. I'm going to draw this last drawing, and then I think I'm going to wrap it up. I'm not super-de-duper in the mood to animate that much tonight. I have to basically make it so that I can put all the mouth shapes in there without actually drawing a bunch of like bone structure and stuff around where the mouth would be. Asher does have big ears. I will give him that. He is a large-eared man. Oh, Paul McCartney, of course. I'm sorry. Yes. She don't give boys the eye. She don't want to see me cry. Can't remember what the next line is there. Anybody remember? She don't give boys the eye. Turn me on when I get lonely. People tell me that she's only fooling. I know she isn't. Alright. She's a woman who understands. She's a woman who loves her man. Okay, let's do the Control-Shift-F. Yes, looks like we are okay. From a, feel standpoint. Looks like we're good. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. As Zuko would say. Uh-oh. Zuko, you're not talking too much tonight, buddy. You got a toot going on? I'm just kidding. I know you don't have a toot going on. Yeah, we want to see a little bit more. Zuko goes, wah. wah. Nah, he's a pretty good singer for a bird. I gotta tell you, it blew me away when I. Can you guys hear that in the background? He's singing. That's nice, Zuko. Good job, buddy. Wah 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 wah. Oh, parrots are nothing but fun. Okay, I need to finish checking my. Wah. Like I said, can you guys hear that? He's singing and I'm singing back to him. Okay, it looks like we're good on fill check. One thing I'm kind of wondering about though is why do the lines all of a sudden get really fat right there? Huh. That's a bit odd. However, I suppose I know why. I actually know why. It's because I cut and pasted that pose, and when I scale it up, the lines are being blurred slightly. I will say it's not enough to cause a problem or wreck the shot, but that slight blurring causes the fill check tool to show the lines much fatter. That's what's going on. It's quite a mystery, isn't it? It's quite a mystery indeed. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about it. We also had a cat and dogs. They all got along. We're a weird family. Yep, parrots are fun. In our old house, my sister relegated a whole room to. Really? Sheesh. Yeah, Valerie used to have, back in the day, conures, and of course she worked for a vet when she was in high school. So, yeah, conures. She's not so big on cockatoos, for example, because they tend to be really needy, whereas African greys are a little more independent. So, okay, that's it for me. How long have I been going? Hour and 12 minutes. It's respectable. I can get this colored in tomorrow, but I just don't feel like going on and on tonight. So, with that, are there any questions from the peanut gallery before I call it a night? I will give you guys a few moments to answer that question whilst I save my work. And I will assume that probably we're all good. And as you guys know, there will be more later. Have a good night.